So, I just got to go see what is currently, like, the most memed movie on the internet, the most hated movie on the internet, and a movie that I happen to like a little bit more than everybody else, apparently. Yeah. Of course, I'm talking about Kraven the Hunter, of course, the brand new film in the Sony Spider-Verse, you know, this weird Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe with all these villain movies that don't have Spider-Man in them. You have the Venom movies, you have Madam Web, you have Morbius, a bunch of really, really mediocre to really laughably bad movies like Madam Web. Now, Kraven Hunter is the newest one. Maybe the last one. There's kind of weird rumors out there saying that it's done. No more Sony Spider-Verse films. There's also other rumors saying it's just on pause for now. Whatever. And if you look online about this movie, you're going to see a lot of crap about how awful it is, how just laughably bad it is, how it might be worse than Madam Web. And I am here to tell you that there are a lot of people out there putting out big reviews saying Kraven the Hunter's an embarrassment, it's the worst movie ever, and they are just trying to view bait you. Because this movie, listen, it's not great. It's not anything special. It's not going to blow anybody away, and it's also not the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. This is the most standard action comic book movie I have ever seen in my entire life. It doesn't do anything egregiously wrong. It's fast-paced. It's relatively entertaining. Has enough action scenes and violence to keep you hooked throughout its whole runtime. And it just doesn't do anything totally offensive to make it unwatchable. This is nowhere near as bad as something like Madam Web, where that film was just so laughably awful, just with its characters, its story, its villain, that it was damn near unwatchable unless you wanted to just laugh at it. This, on the other hand, has some qualities to it that make it redeemable. This, to me, felt like a Netflix action movie. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. One of those, like, thousands of Netflix action films that are just very generic and sort of boring because of how generic and predictable they are, but on a good night can be very entertaining. It could just be a fun thing to put on in the background, and that's what Kraven the Hunter is to me. Now, who is Kraven the Hunter? Kraven the Hunter is, of course, one of the best Spider-Man villains ever. He's this badass Russian dude who just hunts, and he hunts Spider-Man, and he's just a really cool character, and a year ago during the Spider-Man video game, we got a really awesome version of this character. This movie is about an interesting take on this character, a take that I'm not really in love with as a comic book fan. He's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who really just plays this badass killer who's kind of got these superpowers, and he's named Kraven the Hunter. There really aren't that many connections to the comic book Kraven outside of that, other than, like, what weapons he uses and the fact that he's Kraven. And the whole sort of story about this movie is he is the son of this badass gangster played by Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe, who like 10 years ago probably could have played an incredibly comic accurate Kraven and would have been an amazing Kraven. But Russell Crowe is his father, and he's got a brother who of course is another big Spider-Man character that I won't spoil just in case you don't know. And he has this weird falling out with his father. He eventually becomes Kraven the Hunter, this powerful dude. His brother gets kidnapped by the Rhino, who's the villain of this movie, and Kraven has to go save his brother. It's a very simple story about somebody gets taken. Kraven's like, hey, I gotta go get him back because I'm this badass dude who hunts bad guys and kills them. And that's pretty much the story. And from there, what you get is just action sequence after action sequence with some mediocre storytelling and some dialogue in between. Now, a lot of the bad stuff I've been hearing about this movie is the CGI. And yes, the CGI is not very good in this film. Is it the worst that I've seen in a comic book movie this year alone? Not even close. It's like choppy CGI, but it's nothing so terrible it ruins the film. Another thing I've heard is that the ADR is really, really awful. The ADR, the dubbing is horrible. And yeah, it is pretty bad. Is it movie breaking? I don't know. I've seen a lot worse in movies. The other main thing I've heard is that the acting is not really good here. The writing is not fantastic. And to that extent, I will say, yeah, a lot of the actors here, outside of the physicality of the role with Aaron Taylor Johnson, really feel like they're honing it in for the most part. I think Russell Crowe gives a really good performance. I think the guy that plays the Rhino kind of brings a fun performance. Like, I actually enjoyed that character for the most part. I think Fred Hetchinger, who plays the brother, did a decent job. The writing is not great. It's a little cringy. It's a little stupid and goofy and what you would expect from a Sony Spider-Man movie, but at the end of the day, it wasn't anything so insultingly bad that it made the movie not entertaining or unwatchable. It was just fine and, like, sometimes funny. Not funny intentionally, but funny because of how cringy it was. But yeah, it works enough that it doesn't ruin the movie, in my opinion. And then you have the action sequences. This movie's hard R, and you get a lot of Kraven just killing people in very creative ways. I thought the action sequences were put together well. Yeah, a lot of really goofy CGI at times, but Kraven is a badass, at least this depiction of him. He is this ultimate, sort of predator, and the way he rips guys apart and, jumps around cars and holds a helicopter with a rope, like, there are some really good action sequences in here that I found to be sort of suspenseful and badass and kind of punchy, and I enjoyed them. It kept me hooked. I thought the action sequences in this movie were a lot better than the brand new Venom film and some of the other, obviously Madam Web, a lot of the other Spider-Man verse films. I think this was probably the best Sony Spider-Man villain movie outside of maybe the original Venom, like when it comes to the action. I just thought it was really gutsy, really punchy. There was this other villain in the movie that was kind of shoehorned in, this guy, the Foreigner. Probably would have been cooler if he was the main villain, but there's a lot of cool sequences with him and his powers that I thought worked, even if the writing around his character just was kind of goofy and thrown in. I think the Rhino himself was a decent villain, kind of a cool character, and I think the whole fight scene with him works well enough. Yes, the CGI is not the best, but it was fine. Like, yet again, I keep going back to, like, this is just a normal, average action film. A normal, average comic book action film that will I forget in like a week from now? Yes, but was I thoroughly entertained watching it? Yes. Is this something that I'm going to be making videos about? The worst movie ever. Sony should be embarrassed. Sony should shut down the whole studio. This is the worst thing to ever touch, like, the movie theater screens. Like, give me a break, man. The internet has become so, like, hyperbolic. It's unbelievable. If this movie came out 6 years ago, 7 years ago, in like the height of comic book mania, it would be like a 70% of Rotten Tomatoes, and people would be like, it's a really good movie. It's the Kraven the Hunter movie we've been waiting for. It's become cool to hate on comic book movies, and yet, you know, I've been a part of that. There have been comic book movies the last year, Marvel specifically, that I just have not been a fan of, and I have made some very negative videos on them, but those are movies that, in my opinion, had real problems. This is a movie that I'm not going to, like, just absolutely rip apart because of the views, because of the ratings, or whatever. Like, yes, there are things about this movie that are not good. It's not a great movie when it just comes to the technicality of it. But it's also a movie that I will recommend you go check out if you're somebody who likes action movies. You gotta know what you're getting into, though. If you're looking for, like, a great all-time comic book film, you're not gonna get it here. If you're looking for something that's gonna be a big Spider-Man action film that's gonna be the Kraven that you've always wanted to see on the big screen, you're probably not gonna get that. But if you're somebody looking to just go to the movies and watch, like, a fun action movie that has some really good action to it and is paced somewhat well, like, in my opinion, it wasn't boring, it didn't really drag, it flew by, then yeah, Kraven the Hunter will fill 2 hours of your life and you won't feel like you were, you know, had that time stolen from you. I think when it comes to the whole Sony Spider-Man universe, the Spider-Man-less universe, this might be the best movie out of all of them. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Venom films. I didn't like Morbius. I think Madam Web is a stinking pile of poop. This movie's fine. Oh, the only thing I didn't really love about it that really was kind of egregious is I think Calypso is a horrible character, and her inclusion in this movie is just so pointless. And Ariana DeBose, who's, you know, Academy Award winner, I feel like is really underutilized here. She could be something really great, but she was given a lot of the worst dialogue that this script had to offer, and just, her character just felt thrown in, and I just wasn't a fan of anything with her. And yet again, Aaron Taylor Johnson, I don't know if he gave his best performance here, and he is one of my favorite actors in Hollywood that I just don't think has broken out yet into the mainstream, and obviously this isn't going to be his breakout because people are just shitting on this movie, and it's going to bomb at the box office like all of these Sony Spider-Man movies sort of do, other than the Venoms. But I think he's a great actor. I think he sells the physicality of like a superhero type character. I hope he gets another shot as another character maybe in the DC universe or something. I also love Russell Crowe. He always brings his A game. It doesn't matter what movie he's in, and he's been making a lot of bad movies lately. And a lot of the bad movies he's in turn out to be, you know, he gives a decent performance in them. But overall, Kraven the Hunter is a fine movie. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5. Like, it's just a decent, average action film. I was thoroughly entertained by it. I can recommend that you go check it out because I think you'll probably be thoroughly entertained about it, and I think everybody on the internet needs to check themselves. I understand that there are some people out there that probably do have the opinion that this thing is an atrocity, but I have watched some reviews. I have read some reviews from some people that I feel like probably didn't even see the movie. They were just like, hey, opportunity to gain some views. Kraven the Hunter, the worst movie of all time. Because, like, come on, man. We don't have to be so hyperbolic with film. Like, yeah, there are films that are embarrassing, that are so bad and insulting that they're just embarrassing. There's films that try to push the message and the political vibes that end up making it really embarrassing. There's just a lot of that garbage out there. But then there's some films like this where they're just so standard and they're so basic and they're so just kind of average and in the middle that to waste the time of shitting on it the way that the internet is, I just don't understand it. I don't really support it. I don't really like it. I think it's a waste, and I think there's a lot of good in this movie and a lot of good people that worked on it that don't deserve to get the same kind of treatment that, like, we should be giving the J.J. Abrams for making The Rise of Skywalker. That is an insulting movie. Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny. That is an insulting movie. Snow White, probably gonna be an insulting movie. Kraven the Hunter, forgettable movie, but an enjoyable time if you need something to waste 2 hours on. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more, turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.